January 1965, Atlanta, Georgia. A Baptist preacher's wife sits at her kitchen table. There is a package in front of her. It has been sitting in the house for weeks. She opens it inside, a reel of tape, and a letter. The first sentence reads, "King, look into your heart. You know you are a complete fraud." The letter is not signed, but she already knows who wrote it. The United States government. For 60 years, most of the evidence stayed in a vault. In July of 2025, the National Archives released it. 240,000 pages of FBI surveillance files on Martin Luther King Jr. What they contain is not surveillance. It is a coordinated, 6-year campaign by the American government to destroy one man, wiretaps in his home, microphones in his hotel rooms, an agent flown 1,000 miles to mail an anonymous package. A countdown. 34 days. This is the story of the operation that tried to make the most famous preacher in America kill himself, and almost worked. 1962. Martin Luther King Jr. is 33 years old. He preaches at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, the same pulpit his father held. He has a wife, Coretta, 4 children, a doctorate from Boston, and a growing problem. Across town, in a dark office in Washington, a 70-year-old man is watching him. Edgar Hoover has run the FBI for 38 years. He has outlasted 7 presidents. He keeps 2 sets of files, the official bureau files and his own personal ones, locked in his office. Blackmail insurance. And in 1962, Hoover becomes convinced that Martin Luther King is a communist. There is no evidence. King's advisor, an attorney named Stanley Levison, has former leftist associations. That is all Hoover needs. In October of 1963, Attorney General Robert Kennedy signs a 30-day authorization to wiretap King's home and the offices of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The 30 days never end. August 28, 1963. The March on Washington. 250,000 people on the National Mall, and King, at 34, stepping to the microphone to speak 5 words that will echo forever. "I have a dream today." Hoover watches it on television. He is furious. 2 days later, his deputy, William Sullivan, head of domestic intelligence, writes a memo. It contains one of the most chilling sentences ever typed inside a democracy. King, Sullivan writes, must now be marked as the most dangerous Negro of the future in this nation. The mission changes. It is no longer about communism. It is about destroying the man. Sullivan's team goes to work. They contact universities to cancel King's honorary degrees. They write to the Vatican, urging the Pope not to meet him. They send anonymous letters to his funders. And then, in January of 1964, they check into a hotel, the Willard Hotel, 2 blocks from the White House. FBI agents arrive before King does. The hotel management lets them in. They plant microphones in the lamps of room 587. They book the adjacent room and set up listening equipment. Over 2 nights, January 5th and 6th, they record 15 reels of audio. They capture a party. They capture arguments. They capture Martin Luther King, exhausted, human, caught in the wreckage of his own private life. Sullivan personally orders a lab technician named John Matter to edit the tapes, select the highlights, make a composite reel. That reel sits in a filing cabinet for 10 months. Then King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. October 14, 1964. King is 35. He is the youngest person ever awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Hoover erupts. On November 18th, in a press conference, he calls King the most notorious liar in the country. 3 days before a Baptist preacher will be celebrated on the world stage, the director of the FBI calls him a liar on national television. 3 days later, November 21st, William Sullivan sits at a typewriter that is not registered to the Bureau. He types misspellings on purpose, so the letter looks like it was written by an angry civil rights supporter. He writes, "You are no clergyman and you know it." He writes, "King, look into your heart." And then he writes the line, "King, there is only one thing left for you to do." You know what it is. He gives King a deadline, 34 days. An FBI agent is flown from Washington to Miami, 1,000 miles, for the sole purpose of mailing the package from a postmark that cannot be traced. It is addressed to King's office at Ebenezer Baptist Church. The package sits there for weeks. In January of 1965, Coretta Scott King opens it. She calls him. Martin listens to the tape on the long-distance line. He says very little. When he gets home, they sit at the table. He tells his closest aides later that it was a suicide letter. They are out to break him, he says. For hours, he sits with it. And here is where the story pivots. He does not break. He flies to Oslo. On December 10th, 19 days after the letter, Martin Luther King Jr. stands in a coat in the Norwegian cold and accepts the Nobel Peace Prize. He says, "I accept this award today with an abiding faith in America." An abiding faith in America. While in a filing cabinet in Washington, his own government keeps the original copy of a letter telling him to kill himself. He goes home. 3 months later, he marches from Selma to Montgomery. 2 years later, he speaks out against Vietnam. The surveillance never stops. And on April 4th, 1968, he is shot on a balcony in Memphis. For 60 years, the raw evidence stayed locked. In 1977, a federal judge named John Lewis Smith ordered the tapes and transcripts sealed in the National Archives for 50 years, until January 2027. But in 2025, a sitting president ordered the seal broken early. 240,000 pages were released on July 21st. The King family opposed it. Bernice King and Martin Luther King III asked the public to read the files, and I quote, "with empathy, restraint, and respect for our family's continuing grief." The files confirm what the Church Committee first exposed in 1976, 2,370 documented COINTELPRO operations, not against foreign spies, against American citizens, civil rights leaders, anti-war students. A program designed to, in Sullivan's own words, discredit, disrupt, and destroy. King was target number 1. And the man who ordered it died in 1972, in his own bed, with 48 years of secrets still locked in the confidential cabinet of a bureau director nobody could fire. So here is what a democracy is. It is a country that produces a Martin Luther King, and it is a country that produces the file cabinet trying to destroy him. Both things at the same time, in the same building, funded by the same taxpayer. The reason we know any of this, the reason his wife's dignity at that kitchen table is part of the public record, is that someone eventually opened the file. A burglary in 1971, a Senate committee in 1975, a historian digging in Hoover's personal papers in 2014, an archive release in 2025, sunlight arriving 60 years late. What the files don't tell you is what it costs to survive them. To sit at a kitchen table with a letter that tells you the country you love wants you gone, and decide any way to fly to Oslo, to keep preaching, to keep marching, to keep believing, that cost has a name. The next time we meet, we'll follow another man who paid it, in a different way. At the bottom of the world, 1,800 miles from the nearest land, a wooden ship named Endurance, crushed by ice. 28 men on a shelf of floating snow, and a captain who had been warned by the old whalers of South Georgia Island that this was the worst ice year in living memory. He sailed anyway,